Wake up, buy here, pay here people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
All right, everybody.
Hey, morning,
hello.
folks. Welcome to
Wednesday.
North Ogden, Utah.
Yeah. So a couple of things.
Oh,
One, I tested positive for COVID yesterday. I've been feeling under the weather since Sunday. And so I was a little bit slow on Monday, I think, and feeling it a little bit today. But
I came upstairs to find this test kit laying on the counter, and I'm thinking, "You're pregnant? Are you trying to tell me you're pregnant?" So turns out to be a COVID test.
It's just a COVID test. So yes, So if I'm a little slow, I may have to ask everyone to kind of add their all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So
a little forgiveness, a little pre-forgiveness is what she asked.
And then this morning when we were talking about this, he goes, "Okay, so I'm going to let you just kind of lead this one." And I was like, shoot.
Is that what you said? That's not the way.
It was not what I said in my head. That's what I said out loud. So,
well, it's no different than any of the rest. You just got us started. So, again, welcome to Wednesday. We got a couple things teed up. We got some more. Of course, I'll remind everybody we have. It looks like we'll have our guest on Friday. You want to remind everybody who our guest is?
Fred from Coffee Guy.
Car Guy
Coffee Talk wrote an article recently about using AI to help benefit your dealership. So we're going to have him on, talk about the article, and just
that'll be interesting.
Catch up with him. So he's a pretty amazing person.
And then on Monday we've got Brent Carmichael joining.
Monday we have Brent Carmichael.
I have so many questions for him. I only get to talk to him every so often, so
I know. So it might be like a 40 minute long,
maybe longer
podcast or something.
I got a lot of math questions for him.
And then for those of you who don't pay attention to stuff like this, last night was the new moon, which means that the night sky is the darkest that it can be during the month, which is really awesome because tonight and tomorrow night is one of the biggest meteor showers or asteroid showers that you see throughout the year. Mm-hmm. So if you've got no clouds tonight, and try to go somewhere where it's just, you can get even more dark. It's better because the moon is so dark, and go out there and enjoy some of the stuff that we sometimes forget that we're a planet in this massive solar system, and there's just so many cool things going on. So that's my geekdomness of watch the stars and enjoy the show.
I would love to do that. At 25 degrees, I may not last very
long. I know, and I'm like, I don't feel well, but I can bundle, so I don't know. So,
we'll see.
But you only get to see this specific one that we pass through every year this time of the year. So if you get a chance, go outside and take a look at it, because that's just something to, it's kind of like, also this is the last thing for before we start the new year, and so it's just like it's pretty cool, pretty exciting.
Well, we got the winter solstice coming up.
Solstice coming up. Jim is a solstice baby. He was born on the solstice, the winter solstice, which is, those of you who don't know, the darkest, or the day that has the least light.
It's the shortest day of the year, which is my birthday, which does not seem fair. There's nothing fair about that, but it's all right. Whatever the solar system has
Mine's
to do.
right at the summer solstice, and so I guess that's like yin and yang. Yeah. Why we balance each other off so well. I don't know. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. So that's enough of that, guys. So today we have a really special guest. I'm going to go ahead and bring her in, and then we can kind of talk about why. Hi, Maggie.
Welcome.
Hello. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me back.
You're so welcome. We always enjoy having you.
We learn a lot.
We learn a lot. I also enjoy conferences and the opportunity to just kind of get to know Maggie, because Maggie's a pretty fun person, and she's just, got a lot of energy and a lot of positivity. And
you guys are killing me here backstage. I'm like,
oh yeah,
it's good stuff. So we were asked to be on a podcast with Maggie. C&M Coaching does there's the drugs that I'm taking for my
Elevate.
headache. Elevate. Thank you. I was like C&M Coaching. I was right. I should have written it down. Elevate. We recorded a podcast last Friday.
Yeah, it should be coming out today.
And it's about collection calls, and like, this is a really rough time of the year for a lot of people. It's one of the seasons of the year that a lot of our friends and dealers out there are having a little bit more of a struggle, just keeping people on top of their payments and all of that. And so is that the reason why you decided to do this podcast?
Yes, there were two reasons. The first was I really felt like we were missing some customer service in our collections calls. And also I feel like there's a lack of questions in collections calls. Like when someone calls up and they can't make their payment, I want to know why. And I don't think it's invasive to ask, because you need to plan. Is this going to be something that's going to happen over and over, or is this a one-off thing? And so it kind of started to pile up. Me and my team, we use Slack to communicate, and in our coaches chat, it's like, what happened to the customer service and collections? People are kind of getting ruder, and I don't know if it's because customers are paying less, or there's just more, delinquencies and repos, or what it was. And so I thought, why don't I get a collections manager and experts who have dealt with this and do consult with dealers on the collections level, and let's just have a chat about best practices in collections calls, because I don't know that it's talked about enough. It's always money, 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 money. But like, if you want the money, you got to be nice to the person who has the money. So
does it feel different than other years for you?
A little bit, yes, definitely. I feel like the last, I want to say like probably 3 months, it's gotten worse, to the point where people that we used to hear be, kind of lively and outgoing with the customer have just gotten, I don't know.
So are you seeing that angry customers are on the rise, or that our customer service managers are on that their anger is on the rise?
I think it's a lot of pressure coming from the top down, and then it's hitting that collector, and then the collector is feeling the stress of not being able to collect enough, but sometimes it's out of their hands. Like during COVID, right? What were any of us supposed to do? So I think that the stress comes from the top down. We also need to make sure that we're supporting that team with proper training. And I really haven't seen a rise in angry customers. If anything, it's people who are experiencing job loss or the overall increase in cost of living, but wages not going up at the same time. And then them just being like, holy crap, I can't afford things. And I think that, sometimes you have to do that reevaluation. If you have a customer that's like almost a year from paying off their car and they're like, I can't pay this anymore. Okay, we need to figure something out. We don't want that car back.
Right.
So
what I'm hearing you say is that it's not the quality of the call. It's like the level of calmness and patience and all of that, that the collectors, those who are receiving the call, are giving. And that what I'm hearing you also say is that you're, I don't know if it's an assumption or whatever, but it's like we're hearing out there that dealers are more stressed about payments, and because their lenders are tightening their belts, and so they're probably like, we got to get the payments in, or we're having a problem with covenants, or they're tightening the stuff. So what I'm kind of hearing is it's top down. And so hopefully there's a lot of dealers out there listening that can take a kind of a peek at how they're communicating with their collectors right now.
You're absolutely, collections is tough. It's hard. I mean, and I work with small stores. I'll work with a store that has 2 people, a husband and a wife, running a store, and they are doing collections. And so they're on the front lines. Yeah. If you own a big store and you're not listening to those phone calls and you don't know what's happening, I feel like if you're not in the thick of it, or at least try to be mindful of what your team is experiencing, then you're missing a huge management opportunity. Like if one of my coaches called me today and said, I'm sick, I need you to coach my calls for me, I would jump right in there and do it. I haven't coached calls in like 2 years, but I would do it if somebody needed me to. I still listen to what they're doing. And I think when you own a company that is responsible for collections, don't just trust that everything that you expect them to do is being done, and listen for yourself.
Yeah. One of the things that happens, Maggie, of course, we're having this conversation on a White Hat Wednesday, and White Hat Way for us is a lot of things. And one of those things is trust. And so I think, especially for today, we could talk about maybe what I would call cumulative trust. When you talk about asking that customer to, ask them why, what's going on, how come you're short? I mean, I think a lot of that has how successful we are in that conversation often, to me, has a lot to do with whatever history we have with the customer. Have we established some level of, we call it equity, some equity with the customer, in a way that, we can have that conversation and the customer can still trust that we're interested in their success, because, that all the customer knows is what they see and hear. So I think, what their willingness to tell us much might have a lot to do with the nature of the relationship.
And if they're only hearing from us when when we've done something, or when they've are behind, or they've done something that is wrong.
Our customer that we serve in the buy here, pay here space and lease here, pay here space, they're struggling as it is, right? I mean, money's tight, they're paycheck to paycheck, and so that's kind of their reality. And then I think when you put Christmas on top of that, it's not surprising that we're going to have
time of the year it is kind of typical that people run short.
But dealers are used to dealing with this through seasons. It's just the thing we have different this year is that we have a lot of high costs. Think in fuel prices come down in our area. I hope everybody's experiencing that. But I think the main idea here, though, is that when we just feel like that sometimes we suffer as dealers by not having much of a relationship with the customer outside a past due phone call.
Right.
And so and you can see why that would compound at a time like this, where that would really show its head, in terms of that problem. So this is part of where Michelle and I spend a lot of our work in trying to, create things so that relationship is mended and better.
White Hat Way too is not about just customer facing. White Hat Way is also about what's happening. What's your culture like in your dealer? Right. Because that is actually the springboard for all the stuff that you do with your customers. True. So what's happening, what level of support do our team members feel from us? And it's interesting when you think about just like the typical week in a dealership, and let's say that the RFC or the collections department is there as well. The dealer is like congratulating, high fives, all of the stuff. We did a bunch of sales. We just, all of that. Where is that? Is that happening? Is that happening with the collectors? Are they given kudos for good job and getting excited, or are the dealers placing a lot of emphasis on what it is that's the front end that is the straight line, which is like that part? That's the small part about what's going to be happening for the next 3 years. So dealers, take a really close look about what you're celebrating in your dealership. Are you celebrating the right things? And then something you said before is like, it's support. I know that you do a lot of training. I've worked quite a bit in customer service. So I've had teams all across the U.S. that are on the phones, and support is really, really important. And so part of the support, I think that there are two things, and I just want to kind of get your feedback on this. One of them is support them with training. You mentioned that just a second ago.
I just wrote that down.
Support them with training. And training doesn't have to come from you.
No. It
doesn't have to. It can come from a YouTube video, for crying out loud, if that's what it is. And support and having an open door.
Yeah.
That to me is like super, super critical. What are your thoughts on those two things? Is there anything I'm missing?
Well, I feel like it's really hard to hold somebody accountable for something if you haven't really taught them how to do it.
Amen. Right? Say that again.
And I think that we do that a lot in not only collections, but sales both. Would you dream of hiring someone off the street to rebuild a transmission?
Mm-hmm.
No.
I mean, you can throw YouTube in front of them and say, hey, crack at it, man.
I'm not driving that car. But like, it's the same kind of concept, and collections isn't just about give me the money. And this is a debate I've had many times with my dear friend David Brotherton, because he's like, we're here to get the money, and I'm like, but be nice while doing it. But I still think having a process is really important. And also objection handling techniques and de-escalation techniques, because when you have a crazy customer on the phone, I played a call at TI-ADA last year, a collections call, and this girl called up and she was hot to trot. She was screaming at the guy who answered the phone, and she's like, that little beep over there called me, and she beep, and the whole thing was just beep, 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 and the crowd was loving it. Basically what happened was she was late on her payment, so they added in an extra, $29.99 or whatever. She didn't want to pay that, so she screamed at the woman she was speaking to, hung up, and then called this other gentleman. Well, this other gentleman has dealt with her tons of times. He immediately knew how to diffuse the situation. He got the payment after she ranted and raved at him, and he goes, I can see why she hung up on you. I wouldn't want to talk to you if you were going off like this. Golly, he says to her. But he handled it beautifully. He got the money. And those de-escalation techniques are so important, because we don't always listen. We always want to talk, and get our spiel out. And I'm really excited for our podcast to come out, because I played a call for you guys that went just like that. The customer calls up, and the first 10 seconds of the call are him doing nothing but yelling at the customer about what she owes, what his job title is. And that's not how you go about a call. So, when we post that later, everybody listen to that phone call and then check out your own phone calls. But remember, if you're going to hold them accountable for something, make sure you've taught them how to do it, and then make sure that they have the support to be able to execute it. Meaning, if they get stuck, are you there to help? Do you have, a whiteboard with different objections on it, and teach them some ways to handle those things? Have set policies in place. I can't tell you how many times we start training a collections team and everyone does promise to pay is different. You can't have that. I don't want to call, 4 different collectors and get 4 different answers. I want one answer from everyone across the board.
Yeah. Well, so I want to talk to Mary. She gives me 14 days, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's kind of part of what happens. And listen, I don't want to insert myself between you and David Brotherton, but I got to say, one of the things I hear out there, and this is something we've seen and talked about for many years, is like, we can apply pressure to a customer. If, if we say to a customer, look, I need that payment by 6:00 on Friday, or else, you're probably going to get some payments. But I think the downside is, what about the next 35 payments? I mean, where does that leave our relationship with the customer when the customer can't do it, or the customer pays us and neglects rent? And, it just, we need to kind of have a more comprehensive approach to the whole thing, and with a long-term outlook. And so this is why you hear us talk about emphasizing collection efficiency over delinquency. And let's make sure collectors are being rewarded for the job that they do for us. Because as you said, it's a difficult and important job.
Yeah.
Right.
It is.
Agreed. There are a couple of things we talked during the podcast about some of the things that I had the privilege to teach others. And one of those, the one I talked about was breathing. And so all of you collectors out there, all of you dealers out there, all of you salespeople out there, everyone out there that deals with an angry person, one of the best things that you can do to help keep yourself calm is to breathe. And I'm not talking, and there's psychology behind this. There's slow breath. When you get angry, watch your breath, because it's like, you can slow your breathing down, breathe deeply in, breathe deeply out. That will help you stay calm. And that's really, really important. When you have someone that's angry in front of you, you stay calm. One of the things about when someone approaches you that's full of anger and wants to get, they want to make you angry, because people usually want you to mirror what it is that they're feeling.
Of course they do. Yeah,
exactly. And so, it's, you be calm, and that it's amazing how when you maintain that level of calm, still being an active listener.
That's what I was going to say. If you're breathing, you're listening.
You're listening. So an active listener means you're doing more listening than talking. That you are also personalizing. It's like, oh, Jane, I'm so sorry to hear that. Or whatever it is that you need to do to personalize. remember breathing, staying calm, active listening, acknowledging their emotions. That must
Validate.
You don't have to say we were wrong.
No.
You just have to say, "Boy, you sound really frustrated." Or,
Mhm.
and so let's figure out how we can help and how we can fix the situation. Use positive language. It's like the word help. I'm here to help.
Well, I don't know if you picked up on this, but I did, of course, because this is what I do. But your voice tone completely changed when you're giving all this advice. You went into mother, calm, understanding voice tone. You were talking different before.
Yeah.
And you should put that as a bullet point because use your voice inflection.
Voice inflection.
You didn't even know you were doing it, and you're doing it.
Yeah.
And then there was one last one is restate what they told you.
Mhm.
So, because people don't think you heard them if you go straight into your response. They think you heard them if before you respond to them, you restate what they told you.
Yeah.
So take the time, because it really is, when you're dealing with someone that's angry, it is not the time to hurry up and get off the phone unless it's like abusive, because that's with my teams. I was like, no one deserves to be abused on the phone. You have the right. That was one of the things I loved about the call is she's like, sir, I really am not okay with you talking to me this way, and I don't want to have to cut the conversation off. So let's get this done. And having that not taking abuse. So anything that you would add to that?
No, I think all of that was great. The repeating back to them, I train on that. And I always say, like, don't sound like a robot, but yes, it's really important that you do make sure they understand that you heard them, because that's what they want. And when you said like mirroring, it's 100% true. They want you to be as angry as they are. They want you to feel their frustration. And we use the same thing in sales. When you have a customer that's like, oh, I need a car, and they're going on and on about it. It's like, you want to be as positive as possible to mirror, to get them to mirror you is essentially what you're doing. But in this case, you want to do the same thing. You want to get them to calm down. And although those tips are exactly what we try to teach, because all too often we immediately want to respond with an answer. And like you said, that's going to create aggression. The customer is going to feel immediately defensive, and it's highly likely to further escalate as opposed to de-escalate the situation.
Yeah. One of the things, Maggie, I look forward to having you back on a conversation. Maybe we can make a note here. Oh, somebody just killed our light.
Lost a light, but we're having technical
in the dark.
The light's got COVID.
I'd love to have you come back, Maggie, and talk to us about authority. I mean, we touched on a little bit here, but I think it's a whole big subject about what level of authority collectors can have. Obviously, that's a business matter for every dealer to decide how they want business. I think what I'm hearing when I hear Michelle and you talking about active listening, I view, and I remember I said on your podcast that I like to think of collectors as chief problem solvers. So if I'm listening to an upset customer, I hope that regardless of what words I choose, through this lens, I'm hearing it through the lens of, I have Mr. Customer, I'm listening, and I know that I have the authority to solve your problem, and I hope and expect to do that. So let me make sure I fully understand the problem, and I want to try to not use Band-Aids. I want to try to solve the problem in the most permanent way possible. And I know this is counter to what we see in a lot of collection departments. They're measured on time and how fast can you turn out your calls. And I think what we're really advocating for is let's take our time and let's understand the customer, and let's try not to Band-Aids, because otherwise, another collector is going to be dealing with this frustration 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
And so we just do the best we can to solve it. So this is where the authority thing comes in. Like, what authority do I have as a collector to really solve the problem? Irrespective of my actual authority in the DMS, I certainly can listen and take the proposal to a supervisor suggestion, but we can see how that becomes really difficult if I'm a collector and I take it to a supervisor and my proposals are shot down and again, then that becomes really demoralizing. And
it's also, I mean, that doesn't mean that a collector should just take every proposal that they think.
Right. Of course.
Yeah. So you want to be able to give them some bumpers and here's your box and my box, but they're not the same box. So, well,
I'm a big fan of flowcharts. Like, our word tracks are written in flowchart style, and I feel like it should be the same thing for collections. These are the 3-4 different things that could happen, and then a path for them to follow to know when it's appropriate to escalate to a manager. And I have another phone call that I didn't play. I played it at one of the conferences I spoke at on collections, but basically what happens is the gentleman calls up, his vehicle's been turned off, and he's just turned the beeping truck back on. He's screaming at her. And I'm thinking to myself, if she would have said exactly what Jim said just now, like, hey, let's try to figure out, I want to provide a solution for you, help the best way I can, the call would have never escalated. But instead, the two of them got into a swearing match, and it ends up with no solution. And so how you address the first thing you say after they're done screaming at you is really important. And I still think boundaries are critical. I follow a 3 strikes you're out rule. First time they swear at you, ask them to stop. Second time they do it, you give them a warning. Look, I've already asked you, please refrain from treating me this way. I'm doing the best I can to help. I need to get some facts from you. Let's try to stay calm. Maybe don't say that, but the collector, stay calm. Especially if it's a woman, please don't tell her to calm down. And then after that, if they do it again, then you got to say, I'm going to disconnect this call. I'm going to have my supervisor give you a call, and you got to hang up because nobody should be screamed at, sworn at, degraded. I had somebody call a customer one time, a greedy BIT, fill in the blank. And she's like, you're 74 days past due. How am I greedy? It probably wasn't the best response, but she's right. We
don't always have to be right.
No, but when I think of authority, I think of verbiage. In a phone call, I think of verbiage, I think of vocal tone, and then I think of some sort of flowchart for your staff, ins and outs of rules, policies, when you want this to be escalated. Sometimes too, just a different collector calling the customer can make a difference. A fresh voice doesn't even have to be a person of authority. It just sometimes needs to be someone else, like mom and dad,
Yeah. And I think for me, where I'm coming from on that is regardless of what words I choose, and your flow chart probably goes kind of this direction, I would like to be able to respond to the customer in a way that says, I have the authority and the desire to solve this problem.
Yeah.
So listening accordingly. Like I need to understand the problem. I have a willingness to help solve the problem for you. And so as soon as you quit seeing me as the enemy, we can accomplish more. So it's so regardless of what words I choose to get there, my approach is I'm not the enemy. I'm the person who can help you solve this problem, and so again, I may not use those exact words, but that's certainly the approach that I would be trying to bring. And I just think, we talk about a 10-year approach to collections and all departments in the business. And so while it's Christmas 2023 that we're having this conversation, in reality, if this customer is going to be with us 10 years, and that'll largely be because of the way we handle them and handle their setbacks, then I think we don't have to get so excited about the delinquency. And I know as a former dealer, dealers hear me say that and think, I can't stand a certain amount of delinquency. But, if the alternative is repos and charge-off, then I think we can stand a little more delinquency and a little more cooperation and problem solving. So
I want to close off with just a little bit of some tips for collection managers or dealers to help support their team, because again, it's, White Hat Way is an internal thing as well. And so there are a couple of things that I'd like to get your thoughts on. Yeah. First off is, as a collector, manager and a dealer manager, it's a really good idea to help when we talked about celebrating the sale. How about we start to celebrate diffusing a customer? We were able to take this person who was really angry and create a raving fan from them at the end of the conversation. That is something more to celebrate than selling a car, I think.
I think that it kind of goes back to your open door policy. If you have collectors that feel comfortable coming to you and talking to you about things, they should feel comfortable enough to say, hey, this phone call just came through. This is the caller ID. Can you pull this call? I think this would be a good learning experience for the team. But I think a lot of times people are scared to to do that. And unless you have somebody like us listening to your phone calls all the time, it's weird to hear yourself back on a phone call.
True.
Me, it's nothing. But to some people, it is a really big deal. And I sympathize with that. But I still think if you did something right, it should be acknowledged. And everyone should have the opportunity to learn from it. Because at the end of the day, I realize that you are one collector, one manager, one owner, but really you're nothing without everyone else too.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And then one of the final things that it was a privilege to work with the teams that I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
The open door policy is that they knew that if they had a difficult call, they could send me a text message and say, hey, can I talk to you about this call that happened at this time? So I knew the timestamp, and say at the end of the day, because I want to see how I could have better handled that.
Yes.
So taking the opportunity when you create an atmosphere within your department, where someone feels safe to come and talk to you because they know they're going to get good coaching.
Yeah.
Then you really create a team that just feels very secure in the team, and it's a lot easier for them to be able to relay that to the customer when they feel like I'm appreciated, I'm taught, and that they can leave the end of the day with not feeling like I have to go home and drink a fifth of whiskey. The stuff.
Yeah. I had Audrey Dollar. She's from Rainy Used Cars in Georgia on my podcast like several months ago. And that was one of the things that she talked about, was making sure that she had a safe relationship with her collectors, where they felt like if something like this happened, it wasn't going to be the end of their job, that they were going to come together and try to figure out a way to overcome it. And then again, sharing that knowledge with the rest of your team is so critical. So I think, I hate to say safe space, but a safe environment where people feel like they have someone that they can trust that is going to provide them with an opinion that's not biased.
Yep. And some support and encouragement and all of the other things.
Yeah. There's that word trust again. And it applies in our relationship with our customers and our relationship with our team. We really will benefit from establishing some level of trust. And so this is part of why we talk about it a lot. You'll hear us. We won't shut up about it in 2024. You're going to hear us talking about trust.
Starting.
I think that something else before we leave that I think is important is a welcome call, because I do think it establishes trust between the collector and the person that they're going to be working with. I mean, I have a couple of stores that have gone as far as to make videos. You don't have to do that. I know some collectors don't want people to know their face because they don't want to bump into Joe Schmo at the grocery store. But I think a brief welcome call to introduce, give out your contact information, have a quick chat, maybe verify just 2 or 3 things on their app to make sure, they feel like they're having a conversation with that person, give them a chance to hear your voice. It also helps when they get behind and they know that they have someone that they've already, met. Imagine you getting this phone call out of the blue and they want to know all these things about your life. It's tough. So I think welcome calls also help establish trust between the collector and the customer as well.
I love that. And I would like to take it a little bit, that after that welcome call, a lot of our systems we have in our dealerships have the ability to send texts and video texts, or and so if there's something like there's been some kind of this is how you fix this, or this is what we do here, or whatever, that collector can send out and say, hey, Mary, I just wanted to share this with you. Something that we just put together. And so if you've got any questions, give me a call. But just quick things like that. Part of our collector's time, I think every dealership would benefit if a collector was also spending some of their time, not just trying to hound down money, but trying to build relationships. And that was part of their job.
What about a birthday text? Like those you can automate those.
Yeah, exactly. and
nice.
Exactly.
I hope we'd have more routine dialogue that's, actual dialogue that, build up some sort of relationship. And one mention I would throw on top of your welcome call is, and I get why collectors might not want to have their face on a video. I think in this day and age, there's some fun animations. And so for every collector could have a fun animated video that goes out with their voice.
That's a great idea.
Get a text message that's personal from me, and it has a little fun video that's my voice, and it says, and now as the dealer, I can be sure that every customer's hearing the same thing. So when I think open door policy, I'm thinking about the point of closing, where what do we say to the customer about how are we going to handle their account for the next 3 years? You know, how's that dialogue go? So this is a chance for us to manage that dialogue, reaffirm. And the thing I also love about welcome calls is that we're used car dealers at the end of the day, right? And so what we say before closing, you know, is one thing. What we say to the customer after closing to reinforce and say, hey, we still mean what we said before you bought the car.
And don't forget to refer your friends and family because we're excellent. Like, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're demonstrating it.
Yeah, it's like proving it. It's following through. So it's following through on what, you know, you said you would do at the time of closing.
Yeah.
And so it's a way to reinforce. And of course, to add to that, people are busy on the day of closing, a lot of stuff coming at them, drinking out of a fire hose kind of thing. And so the ability
we've talked about that an awful lot, and it's worth reiterating is that there, you know, there's a lot of stuff.
There's high emotions too, like, and stress too, because sometimes those customers are like, oh, can I really afford this even after they've signed the paperwork? So they're not thinking straight. Call them in, 3 days and have a chat with them. And I'm a big fan of welcome calls.
Yeah.
Anything else you would like to share before we wrap up today, Maggie?
That was it. Was my welcome calls.
I think we didn't really address Anna Maria's comment about we're not quite understanding how it is that you managed to get younger. If you would mind sharing those tips.
We would like to know where you found this youth fountain of youth. They say it's in Florida.
I'm in Wisconsin. I think it just happens when you're a ghost-faced ginger. Like I said to Michelle before we went live, like, I'm so freaking white. I'm as pale as the wall behind me because, stay out of the sun.
Live in Wisconsin, stay out of the sun. Got it.
There you go. Okay, good for the skin. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hey, Maggie, thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate you always. Thanks for having us on your podcast. For everyone out there, the podcast is called Elevate by C&M Coaching, and it's a really great platform.
You're going to want to hear those calls.
You're going to want to listen to everything that she's done before because there's lots of really great information. Maggie, stick around in the background, and we will chat with you in just a second.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, thanks so much for joining. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you all on Friday.